Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. And in this video, I'd like to discuss how, despite Nigel Farage continuing to stage low energy publicity stunts, the party chair has laid out how they aim to develop into a genuine political party over the course of this parliament, including developing a real party structure, and why it involves a hefty focus on Wales next. Also makes you wonder who's really leading the party if Farage doesn't seem to want to be involved in these efforts. Because after all, if we look at what Farage has been up to recently, so just before going off to America, he posted a picture of himself in Clacton, going, oh, lovely day in Clacton. And I said at the time, I suspected that it wasn't actually taken on that day. And then lots of people pointed out, no, Phil, it was taken during the election campaign a month earlier. But also, what's he been up to this week, where he actually has had a photo of himself taken genuinely this week in London, in Westminster, because he was attacking the proposed ban on smoking in beer gardens and other outdoor spaces, and something that's been done in other countries quite successfully. So a 24-hour chimney like Farage is obviously worried. And yet, what did his protest amount to? So he goes along to this pub in Westminster, middle of London, to stand outside with a pint in one hand and a cigarette in the other to denounce the idea. And you think, okay, so what's he protesting against? The idea of banning smoking in beer gardens. Okay, so did he do this in a beer garden? No. The pub he went to doesn't have a beer garden. Nigel Farage, in order to protest against a policy proposal, managed to find a pub that would be completely unaffected by the change. There was a time when you would say Farage was really good at organising political stunts. Now he's just half-arsing it. It's a sign, you might suppose, that his Reform UK party will just bumble its way through the next few years with the same low-energy effort. He's already shown that he's prioritising his usual money-making schemes. As far as I can tell, he still hasn't been to Clacton, much less done anything for his constituents. But the new Reform UK chair, Zia Yusuf, another multimillionaire businessman, was being interviewed by The Independent recently and set out his plan to get this, Nigel Farage into Downing Street at the next general election, which would be a worrying prospect for many reasons if we could ever take it seriously. You know, but you think to yourself, why do they even need to say that? Why do they need to say, oh yeah, we're gonna win the next election? Like, there's plenty of smaller parties that don't feel the need to do that. You know, Farage is a man who didn't realise that none of his party's candidates had been vetted because he paid money to a company which specifically says they don't vet candidates to vet his candidates. Then he had the nerve to sound outraged that this company, which remember doesn't vet candidates, didn't vet his candidates. And now, when wanting to protest against the possibility of having smoking banned in beer gardens, decides to hold a protest at a pub which doesn't have a beer garden. Now, even if we work on the assumption that Farage means well, which is going to require a gravity-defying suspension of disbelief, I do not think that someone with this modus operandum is capable of running something as complex as a government. In fact, if he ever did become Prime Minister, I mean, that would be game over for the country, wouldn't it? I mean, when the Tories win power, you know it's devastating enough. They're going to destroy lives and they're going to leave the country a smoking ruin. But the country will still probably exist, although Brexit has put that in a bit of doubt now. With Nigel Farage, though, oh, that'd be it. Be finished. Game over. Finished. But anyway, they say their plan is to put this charlatan in Downing Street in 2029. And no, it doesn't involve persuading the Conservative Party to adopt him as leader and just sort of hope for the best. It does, however, involve basically doubling their vote in 5 years' time. I don't think this will occur. I'm going to be honest. In fact, if Reform UK even maintain the number of votes they won this year, it will mean either Labour or the Conservatives have messed up royally, perhaps both. From Labour's point of view, in order to stem the tide of voters flocking to the banner of extremists, they need to get these voters to see an improvement in the standard of living. It's easier said than done, but if that happens, Reform UK cannot seriously hope to build on their 2024 success. And from the Conservatives' point of view, for them to stem the tide, they need to make themselves look like a more serious operation than the one that left government this July. Remember, a lot of right-wing voters backed the Tories this year despite the ruinous state of the country and obvious political idiocy of Rishi Sunak. All the Tories have to do is not get worse, and they should at least maintain their share of the vote to a rough approximation. Obviously, it's going to take a big hit from their over-reliance on the very elderly vote, because that means mortality is going to cost them more votes than other parties, although Reform UK have got their own problems in that regard as well, just not as pronounced. But if the Conservatives can actually make themselves look more plausible than under Sunak, it's hard to see how they'd lose even more votes to Reform. Yusuf said he wants to double their vote haul by adopting a proper party structure, by accepting that their policies for this election were essentially hogwash, and to develop the promises into realistic policies, which were very much absent from their own manifesto, or contract as they called it, and to build up their grassroots network so that they can have boots on the ground during election campaigns, which all sounds very sensible. Reform UK do not have a grassroots network. I've talked about this for a long time. They're essentially an entity which was set up with billionaire support, whether from financial backing of unknown origin, but believed to be partly in the form of rubles, or from the British media platforming their ideas for free. You know, Reform UK had this very top-down rise to prominence. They were just being put into the media, into news programmes, news slots, without any build-up. If they had to build up like a normal political party, we wouldn't even know who they are. They'd be an even smaller party than the Yorkshire Party, and you've got no idea who they are. But what Yusuf has laid out here is indeed what Reform UK would need to do to build as a credible party. What he doesn't set out is how he's going to achieve that aim of getting Nigel Farage into Downing Street, other than maybe as a visitor. And even that'll be ambitious. You know, how's he going to form a government just by turning the party into a credible party? There are already parties that are credible parties that aren't going to form a government. I mean, let's look at the specifics. So they want to target more wins in local elections, as well as the Welsh and Scottish parliamentary elections. But the Liberal Democrats have got representation in all of those, and they're nowhere near being able to claim they've got a viable route to government at the next election. Now, it'll come as no surprise that the latest news is of Farage targeting Wales as his next priority. The Welsh elections will be under for the first time in this country for a British Parliament, a fully proportional representation system. That would suit Reform UK because, like a lot of small parties, very inefficient with their vote, trying to drum up support wherever they can rather than focusing on where it can actually achieve results. You're punished much less severely for this with PR. So it will be possible for Reform to actually get a decent haul of seats in the Senate under the next system. Reform UK won a greater share of the vote in Wales this July than across Britain. Reform claim that they want to be the opposition in Wales. Well, of all their dubious claims, actually with a fully PR system, and if the Tories continue to fumble with bad leaders and even worse rhetoric, this is actually one ambition they might actually stand a chance in. That being said, Starmer's government in Westminster will be aiming to show people in Wales, just like everywhere else, that they're turning things around by 2026. At the moment, it's all doom and gloom. It's all, it's crap budget. It's all the Tories' fault. But by 2026, they will want to be showing those improvements. And if they can do this, not only will it give Welsh Labour a boost, it would very much deflate the appeal of Reform UK, wouldn't it? They are an extremist party. And extreme policies tend to work only on those who think there's a major problem, that something's fundamentally broken, and that conventional politics doesn't have the answer for it. If that perception lessens in the next 2 years, Reform UK could be in decline everywhere. But they would still likely have enough votes to get a sizable haul of seats in the Welsh elections. It's just whether or not they'd be the opposition. You just can't imagine them getting close to the number of council seats, though, that like the Lib Dems have in local elections, or even the Greens. And this is important for building up that grassroots network that they want. And this is even assuming that Yusuf is given the space to implement these reforms. He may genuinely think this is the way forward for Reform UK. Does Nigel Farage? I've got a little bit of a feeling that as soon as he does something that Farage doesn't like, the party's going to be changing its chair. It was not very long ago that Nigel Farage was being interviewed. I think it might have been on Channel 4 News. But he was being interviewed and he was asked if he would be turning Reform UK into a real political party with proper structures. And he was very reluctant with his answers. Like, oh, does we really need to? So it's clear he doesn't quite share Yusuf's urgency to turn Reform UK into a political party. After all, he could have just remained leading UKIP if that's what he wanted. I think it's more likely he's just going along with it now because there's no immediate threat to his grift. Even the idea that Yusuf would implement something that would allow members to bin the leader, which would first of all mean having proper members. Farage has nothing to fear from that because he enjoys cult-like support amongst party supporters. But long term, I can't imagine he really wants these proposed reforms if it means party members voting on other aspects of the party structure. For example, at the moment, Nigel Farage can do as he likes. He's like a god within his party. He can hire and fire as he likes. Doesn't have to go through any structures at all. I wonder if Yusuf even shares Farage's vision for Reform UK. You know, perhaps he does, because we don't really know what they think behind closed doors or say behind closed doors. You know, the real vision, I mean, not the one they talk about in the media. Because although there's some speculation about what Reform UK's real vision is, it is absolutely not to form a government in 2029 or any other time. Because it's not realistic, and they know that. They're not idiots. There's no prospect of an extremist party led by someone as nationally unpopular as Nigel Farage forming a government in their own right. It is possible that Farage and Tice do want the party to become a long-term fixture in British politics. That's possible, although I doubt Farage's commitment. He prioritises the grift over politics every time. But it may be more likely, as I've suggested in the past, that the ultimate aim of Reform UK is just to change the Conservative Party. They're like a parasite. Just to infect the Conservative Party and then leave them to it. Yusuf says that although their election promises from this year are essentially binned, which is fine, nobody expects a losing manifesto to be left intact, they'll be pushing policies on lower taxation and lower immigration. In other words, they're going to keep pushing extreme policies on the areas that cause fights in the Conservative Party. Best thing the Conservative Party can do here is basically to talk about anything other than low taxes and immigration. But they won't. You know they won't. You know, and maybe this is Reform UK having the intention of triggering a battle royale within the Tory party, which results in the pragmatists being definitively beaten, expelled, and then Reform UK can withdraw and just go, right, we've turned the Tory party into basically us now, and that's it. You know, wait until Labour have shit the bed with the public and just hope that that's enough to see the Tories come rising back to power and pick up where they left off, but without the wets, the Marxists like Rishi Sunak in charge. But what I don't think they're going to do is build up lots more votes over the next few years. I don't think Farage wants to lose control of the party with these democratisation policies. But I do believe that their aims for Wales are really their aims for Wales, because that's more feasible, even though I would like to think that in a year and a half's time, Reform UK should start to lose its relevance. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.